Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. And welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCEU Daily. And this is going to be a retrospective, talking about none other than the DCEU, of course. It says it in the title. The DCEU, the most divisive, the most controversial, the most beautiful film franchise there's ever been in the history of movies. Why is that? I think the box office is pretty solid. It is. They've made a lot of money. That's interesting to me. This is a very divisive fan base, franchise, and all of that. But it has made a lot of money. And that's very interesting to me as well. But it's a very unique fan base when you look at this movement to get the Snyder Cut released. No other franchise has got that. And also I think our fan base isn't deluded in thinking that we have the perfect franchise. We don't. It's not perfect. It's absolutely flawed. It's not for everyone. But it is for us when you look at Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Aquaman, Shazam. It's been a very mixed bag, hasn't it? And this is what I like about it. I think all the films are different to each other. There's nothing there that you can say, oh, that's ripping off this or ripping off that. I think there's so much originality in this franchise, and I think that really, really does please me. I hope in the future we continue in that vein when we look at next year's Wonder Woman 1984 and Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is actually a comedy, a kind of Deadpool type comedy. So that's interesting. That's very different to what the DCEU's seen before. And of course we've got Wonder Woman 1984, which is a film on a level. It is a serious film. There will be elements of fun and comedy, but mostly I think you can kind of look at how the first Wonder Woman movie was made. And I think you can look, we've got something really, really special. Nobody really knows what this movie is about. But apparently, according to DC World, they've received some discs with the Snyder Cut on them. Birds of Prey and Wonder Woman 1984. Do I actually believe this? No, I do not. But then again, I have to hold back because the guy at DC World seems like a really nice guy, a family guy. Would he lie? Who knows? We'll never know, because this is the problem with the internet. A lot of people make a lot of bold, brash claims, but we can never know if it's true. So let's get back with this retrospective on the DCEU. I think when we look at 2013's Man of Steel, I don't think any of us ever expected a Superman film to be made in quite that way. And I think when you talk about divisive, you talk about the death of Zod, Superman breaking Zod's neck. I think it's not just about Superman killing here, it's the way he kills. And that makes it impossible to show to a child, in my opinion. I mean, you guys may have done that, but in my opinion, it's very difficult to show that film to a child. And there's some other elements in that film as well. Now, I love Man of Steel. It's one of my favourite films of all time. Let's not get it twisted here. But I think when you look at die-hard Superman fans and die-hard Batman fans, when I talk about the comic book fans, if I was them, I can understand why they were offended by the DCEU. It's not the Superman they grew up with. Now, nobody's saying that Zack Snyder or Christopher Nolan or Chris Terrio have to kind of give us Christopher Reeve or what Tim Burton did or whatever, right? Whatever your favourite live-action version of these characters are. Most people like Christopher Reeve's Superman. Without Christopher Reeve's Superman and what Dick Donner and what Mankiewicz did with Superman the movie, I wouldn't even be a Superman fan now. I've never picked up a comic in my life, to be, brutally honest with you. But you know what? I think if we're just going to make the same things as we did, like we kind of experienced as we grew up, what's the point? We got those things. We can watch them whenever we want. So I'm not a fan of kind of, oh, well, it's not like this or not like that. I think people have certain guidelines with Superman. One of the things is that he's not, he's optimistic, that he's not too dark. And I think the Snyder Superman was certainly darker than any other version we'd ever seen. And there's no question about that. I think you can even get away with, having Batman killing more, even though a lot of people bitch about Snyder's Batman killing. But I think you can get away with Batman more than you can with Superman. Mainly that's because Superman has always been this big blue Boy Scout in the comics and in the Reeve movies as well. Now, some Snyder fans try and defend the killing of Zod by Superman by saying that Superman killed the three villains from Krypton. In the fortress, he chucked them and they got... Look, that's not what happened. They go down these kind of ice slidey things. They're probably unconscious at the bottom of the fortress. That's how I always assumed it. So I never thought that he killed them. And I think that's kind of trying to twist the narrative to defend something else. I don't really need to defend Superman killing Zod. I don't really need to defend Batman killing people in the Snyderverse. I don't mind those things. It doesn't offend me. I really enjoyed those films. But also, I don't want to gag the people who were offended by those things, who have been reading the comics all their lives and want to see the comics translated a lot more loyally. I think the next Superman incarnation will definitely be optimistic and lighter. The suit will definitely be brighter. And as I keep on saying, I don't understand after all these 6 or 7 Superman films how we've never seen Superman in at least one of the comic book costumes. I mean, I told you about the story I've written where in flashbacks he wears the Action Comics #1 costume. Why not? Why shouldn't he? It's a fucking beautiful costume and it's synonymous to what Superman always has been. There's always been this controversy to have the red trunks or not to have the red trunks because people kind of say it's kind of goes back to the circus strongman. Look, I think if you design the red trunks in a proper way and they're actually trunks, rather than, how should I put it? How do you Americans say? Underpants, whatever you call them. If they're more shorts than the old-fashioned pants, right, I think you get away with it. I think Superman can still have the red trunks if they're designed in such a way. I certainly think that the Action Comics #1 red trunks would look freaking awesome. But again, I do think that Superman fans especially deserve some comic book accuracy because they haven't always had that. Even in Superman the movie, I mean, the green power crystal is actually the same colour as kryptonite. That can be really confusing because kryptonite is in Superman the movie as well because Lex Luthor unleashes that on Superman near the end of the movie. So I always said that power crystal that kind of builds the fortress should have been blue or anything, although blue can actually weaken Superman, so you couldn't go there either. But any colour but green, because green is synonymous with kryptonite. So then you look at Batman v Superman. Now this is really the real controversy. A lot of people did not like this movie. A lot of people really did like this movie. And I think it amazes me really. And again, it's one of those films. It's like Marmite. You either like it or you don't. I don't particularly like Marmite, but I love Batman v Superman. I think it's a really, really good film. I think the main narrative of this film is for the world to accept Superman. Everyone says this is a film about Batman and that Zack Snyder's more of a Batman fan than a Superman fan. I don't know about that, but this is Superman's movie. This is Superman's movie. Jesus Christ, the whole film's about him. It's about him being hated by the public, being hated by Batman, and in the end, redeeming himself in front of the people who didn't trust him or like him. He redeems himself and sacrifices his own life. This is Superman's movie. And I think the whole of the 5-arc Snyder plan was about Superman, really, one way or the other. So to say that Zack Snyder was getting Batman to dominate this universe, especially seeing that Batman wasn't even in the first film, he could have even had a post-credit scene of Batman stealing kryptonite, right? So at the end of the day, that accusation is a blunt one. So I just love Batman v Superman. And then we go to Suicide Squad, which was absolutely tarnished by the critics, but I think a lot of the public actually enjoyed this film because they went back to see it. This film made around $800 million globally, so you can't say that's a failure. Wonder Woman is a massive, massive hit. Ultimately, that is not a Marvelised film, but this is when the DCEU started to change. This is when Warner Brothers started to look at Walter Hamada and New Line Cinema taking over production. So Snyder's die was cast a long time before. Really, I mean, he was shooting Justice League at that time, but I think the die was cast for him being replaced a long time before people actually think the decision was made. What do I think about him being replaced? Even if he got to do his Justice League and they never sacked him the way they did, which they shouldn't have done, of course, I think his position was untenable. His position was untenable because it was not working for a mainstream audience, and the studio needs a mainstream audience. He had to go. It was going to happen one way or the other. But the way it was done was very, very ungentlemanly. So then after Wonder Woman, you've got Justice League, an absolute controversy. What happened? Who happened? Who made the decisions? Was it Jeff Johns to blame? Was it Kevin Sugihara? I've always said through what I've heard and the people I've spoken to that Kevin Sugihara made the big decisions. People don't like Jeff Johns because Jeff Johns wasn't agreeable with what Zack Snyder was doing. He's a die-hard comic book man, and he thinks that this world should have a level of optimism in it. Some people may argue that it does, but that's an argument for another time. Justice League was a film that Warner Brothers believed should be a lighter film, should be an optimistic film, and that's not what Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio had in mind, even though Chris Terrio told the public in an interview that Justice League was the Return of the Jedi of the Snyder kind of arc. So I think I was stunned when I heard that Zack Snyder was made to rewrite the first draft because it was too dark. That didn't make sense to me. It was all very strange. So in the end, I think a lot of people are to blame to what happened with Justice League. And then they took a year off and they came back, and James Wan gave us Aquaman. And you can see the trailer right behind me right now. I think it's an amazing film. I really do. I think it's a sensational movie visually. I think Jason Momoa is brilliant, William Dafoe's brilliant, Nicole Kidman's brilliant. You know, the whole team's brilliant. I think James Wan directed a great superhero movie. Then we land on, and I think before I leave Aquaman, it comes after a disastrous film. So for that film to bring home the bacon in over $1 billion is a great achievement, and it just shows you the popularity of Jason Momoa as that character, and James Wan did an excellent job, and I can't wait to Aquaman 2. And then we get up to date with Shazam. Now, Shazam was accused of being a very Marvelised film. In fact, it showed even Marvel how to make a great comic book movie. It was fun, it was light, it was funny, but it had a balance. It also was extremely dark and emotional in places. That film worked for a hell of a lot of people, including me. It's a really, really good CBM, and that really rounds up what we've had with the DCEU so far. We have seen a franchise that's compelled opinion, that's given controversy. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, the DCEU is a franchise everyone is still talking about.